You ever feel like your life is slightly out of order, like your room after a busy week, and you keep pretending it is fine? Hello, my friends. Today I want to tell you a story, not about a hero, not about a billionaire, just about an ordinary man who slowly changed his life by following simple rules. His name was Daniel. Daniel was not lazy. He was not stupid. He was just lost. Every morning, he woke up tired. His room was messy. His desk was full of unfinished notes. His phone was full of notifications. His mind was even worse. He wanted success. He wanted confidence. He wanted respect. But he did not know where to begin. One day, after a long and frustrating week, he looked around his small apartment. Clothes on the chair, books on the floor, empty coffee cups on the table. He felt something strange. It was not anger. It was not sadness. It was responsibility. For the first time, he stopped blaming his job. He stopped blaming his past. He stopped blaming other people. He asked himself a simple question. If I cannot control my own room, how can I control my life? That question stayed in his mind. The next morning, he did something very small. He made his bed. It sounds simple. It sounds almost silly. But for Daniel, it was different. When he pulled the blanket tight and fixed the pillow, he felt a quiet sense of order. One small victory before breakfast. Then he cleaned his desk. He threw away old papers. He organized his books. He opened the window and let fresh air in. As the room became cleaner, his thoughts became clearer. He realized something important. Chaos outside creates chaos inside. Order outside creates order inside. That day at work, he noticed he was more focused. He finished his tasks faster. He spoke more confidently in a meeting. Nothing magical happened, but something had started. In the evening, instead of wasting hours scrolling on his phone, he sat quietly and thought about his life. He asked himself hard questions. What kind of man do I want to become? Why do I complain so much? What can I improve today? He did not like all the answers. Some answers were uncomfortable. He saw his excuses. He saw his bad habits. He saw how often he chose comfort instead of growth. But instead of feeling ashamed, he felt strong. Because when you tell yourself the truth, you become powerful. Daniel began to understand that life is not only about big dreams. It is about daily discipline. It is about small actions repeated every day. He started speaking more honestly. If he made a mistake, he admitted it. If he promised something, he did it. Slowly, people began to trust him more. He also changed how he spoke to himself. Before, his inner voice was cruel. It said, "You are not good enough." It said, "You will fail again." Now, he changed the voice. He did not lie to himself. He did not say, "You are perfect." Instead, he said, "You can improve." He said, "Stand up straight." He said, "Take responsibility." His posture changed. His tone changed. His habits changed. Weeks passed. Daniel was still the same person on the outside. Same job, same city, same small apartment. But inside, he was different. He understood that life becomes meaningful when you accept responsibility for it. When you stop waiting for someone to save you. When you stop expecting life to be easy. He learned that discipline is not punishment. It is freedom. Freedom from chaos. Freedom from excuses. Freedom from regret. And this was only the beginning. Because when a person decides to put his life in order, even in small ways, he begins a journey that changes everything. Daniel did not know it yet, but these simple actions were building a stronger mind, a stronger character, and a stronger future. And maybe, in some quiet way, his story is not so different from yours. Daniel did not become a new man in 1 week. Change was slower than he expected. Some mornings he still felt tired. Some nights he still wanted to escape into easy distractions. But something inside him had shifted. He could no longer pretend that his life was someone else's responsibility. One evening, after work, he met an old friend named Mark. Mark liked to complain. He complained about the government, about money, about his boss, about luck. Daniel used to agree with him. It felt comfortable to blame the world. But this time, Daniel listened quietly. On the way home, he noticed something. Complaining gave temporary relief, but it solved nothing. It made him feel weak. It made him feel like a victim. That night, he made another decision. He would stop saying things that made him weaker. Instead of saying, "This job is ruining my life," he said, "What skills can I learn here?" Instead of saying, "I don't have time," he said, "I'm choosing something else over this." Instead of saying, "It's not fair," he said, "What can I do about it?" The words he used began to change his thinking. Language is powerful. The way you speak shapes the way you think, and the way you think shapes the way you act. Daniel started reading more carefully, not just books, but his own reactions. When someone criticized him, he used to become defensive. Now, he tried something different. He listened. Sometimes the criticism was unfair, but sometimes it was useful. He realized that if he wanted to grow, he had to accept feedback without anger. Growth requires humility, and humility is not weakness. It is strength under control. At work, a mistake happened in his team. In the past, Daniel would quietly hope that nobody noticed his part in it. This time, he raised his hand and said, "I made an error. I will fix it." The room became silent for a moment, but something surprising happened. His manager did not shout. His colleagues did not laugh. Instead, they respected him more. Taking responsibility did not destroy him. It built his reputation. Slowly, Daniel understood another lesson. You should compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to someone else today. Social media had filled his mind with images of perfect lives, perfect bodies, perfect careers, perfect relationships. He used to feel small when he saw those images. Now, he asked a different question. Am I better than I was last week? If the answer was yes, even a little, that was enough. He created simple daily rules for himself. Wake up at the same time. Exercise 3 times a week. Read at least 10 pages a day. Tell the truth, even when it is uncomfortable. These rules were not dramatic. They were not exciting, but they were consistent. Consistency began to build confidence. Confidence is not loud. It does not shout. It grows quietly when you keep promises to yourself. One morning, Daniel looked in the mirror. He stood straighter. His eyes looked clearer. He was not perfect. He still had doubts, but he no longer felt powerless. He had learned something essential. Life is suffering sometimes. There will be stress. There will be unfair moments. There will be pain. But suffering becomes meaningful when you carry it with dignity. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he asked, "What can this teach me?" This small change in perspective gave him strength. He started helping a younger colleague at work who struggled with organization. Daniel showed him how to plan his week, how to clean his workspace, how to speak more confidently in meetings. While teaching, Daniel understood the lesson even deeper. When you help others grow, you grow faster yourself. Responsibility was expanding. It was no longer only about his room or his habits. It was about his character, his influence, his example. And slowly, without noise, without drama, Daniel was building a life based on order, truth, and discipline. He was not chasing happiness anymore. He was building meaning. And meaning lasts longer than happiness. As the weeks turned into months, Daniel noticed something strange. His life was not easier. In some ways, it was harder. He was more aware now, more aware of his weaknesses, more aware of his fears, more aware of the gap between who he was and who he wanted to become. And awareness can be uncomfortable. One evening, he sat alone in his apartment. The room was clean. The desk was organized. His schedule for the next day was ready. Everything looked in order, but inside, he felt restless. He realized that putting your life in order is not only about cleaning your room or waking up early. It is also about facing the parts of yourself that you try to hide. Daniel had always avoided conflict. If someone disrespected him, he stayed silent. If someone crossed a boundary, he smiled and accepted it. He told himself he was being kind, but deep down, he felt resentment. He started to understand another important lesson. If you are too agreeable, people may use you. If you never say no, your yes loses value. Being good does not mean being weak. The next time a colleague tried to give him extra work without asking politely, Daniel did something different. He did not shout. He did not insult. He simply said, I cannot take this right now. I have my own responsibilities. His heart was beating fast when he said it. But nothing terrible happened. The world did not collapse. His colleague did not hate him. In fact, the colleague respected him more. Daniel learned that you must stand up straight, not only in posture, but in character. He also began thinking about his past. For years, he blamed his childhood, his teachers, his old friends for his lack of confidence. And yes, some experiences were painful. Some words had hurt him deeply, but he saw a hard truth. You cannot change the past. You can only decide what to do with it. He stopped telling the same old story about himself, the story where he was always the victim, the story where others were always wrong. Instead, he asked, what strength did these experiences give me? Pain had made him observant, failure had made him thoughtful, rejection had made him independent. Suddenly, his past looked different. It was not a chain holding him back. It was training. Another change happened in how he chose his friends. Before, he spent time with people who laughed at discipline, people who mocked ambition, people who said, relax, life is short. Every time he tried to improve, now, he paid attention to something simple. Do I feel stronger or weaker after spending time with this person? If the answer was weaker, he reduced the time, not with anger, with drama, just with clarity. He began spending more time with people who talked about ideas, growth, books, health, goals. Conversations changed, energy changed. Environment matters more than we think. At the same time, Daniel worked on his health. He started exercising regularly. At first, it was difficult. His body was stiff, his muscles were weak, but every workout was a message to himself. I am worth effort. Physical strength slowly improved his mental strength. When you push your body beyond comfort, your mind learns discipline. He also reduced small lies in his life. No more pretending to be busy when he was lazy. No more saying I will do it later when he knew he would not. No more smiling when he felt hurt. Truth became his rule. Not brutal truth, not cruel honesty, but clear and responsible truth. Something powerful happens when your words match your actions. You feel aligned. You feel solid. Months ago, Daniel felt like a leaf in the wind, moving wherever life pushed him. Now, he felt different. He was not controlling everything. Life still had surprises, problems still appeared, stress still existed, but he was not drifting anymore. He had direction, and direction, even more than speed, is what gives life meaning. He understood that rules are not cages, they are structure. They are support, like the frame of a building that allows it to stand tall. Without structure, everything collapses. With structure, growth becomes possible. Daniel was no longer searching for motivation every day. He was building character, and character stays when motivation disappears. Daniel began to see something he had never noticed before. When your life becomes more organized, your problems do not disappear, they become clearer. One morning, his manager called him into the office. There was a new project, a difficult one, tight deadline, high pressure. In the past, Daniel would have felt panic immediately. He would have thought, I am not ready, I will fail. This time, the fear was still there, but it did not control him. He listened carefully, he asked questions, he wrote notes. Instead of focusing on how stressful it would be, he focused on what he could control. Control your effort. Control your attitude. Control your preparation. Everything else is noise. That week was exhausting. Long hours, mistakes, corrections, moments of doubt. But every evening, instead of complaining, he reviewed his day. What did I do? Well, what can I improve tomorrow? He treated himself like a student of his own life. And slowly, he noticed something powerful. Confidence does not come from comfort. It comes from facing what you once avoided. When the project ended, it was not perfect. but it was solid. His manager nodded with quiet approval. That small nod meant more to Daniel than loud praise. Because he knew the truth. He had earned it. Around the same time, another challenge appeared. A disagreement with someone close to him. In the past, Daniel avoided difficult conversations. He preferred silence over tension. But silence builds distance. So he chose differently. He sat down and spoke calmly. He did not attack. He did not blame. He simply explained how he felt and listened carefully in return. The conversation was uncomfortable. Honest conversations usually are. But something changed after that day. The relationship became stronger, clearer, more respectful. Daniel understood another lesson. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to handle conflict with maturity. He also began thinking about long-term goals. Before, his goals were vague. I want success. I want money. I want happiness. Now, he asked deeper questions. What kind of person can handle success? What kind of character can manage money wisely? What habits create real happiness? He realized that chasing results without building character is dangerous. If you receive something you are not ready for, you will lose it. So he focused on becoming the type of man who deserves what he wants. He improved his skills step by step. He studied after work. He practiced communication. He learned to manage his time more strictly. Discipline was no longer something he forced. It became part of his identity. There were still hard days. Days when he felt tired. Days when progress seemed slow. On those days, he remembered something important. Progress is often invisible while it is happening. A tree does not grow loudly, but every day, under the surface, roots are expanding. Daniel trusted the process. He stopped looking for quick rewards. He stopped comparing his timeline with others. He accepted that meaningful growth takes time. And slowly, people around him began to notice the difference. They asked for his advice. They trusted his decisions. They listened when he spoke. But the biggest change was internal. He no longer felt like life was happening to him. He felt like he was participating in it, actively, consciously, responsibly. And that feeling gave him strength no external reward could match. He finally understood something simple but powerful. If you want a better life, you must become better yourself. Not louder, not more impressive. Better, stronger in discipline, clearer in thought, braver in action. And once you accept that responsibility, everything begins to change. Daniel's growth was steady, but life was not interested in making things easy for him. One afternoon, the company announced changes. Budgets were cut, positions were removed. Rumors spread quickly through the office like fire. Fear returned. Daniel felt it in his chest. That old anxiety, that old voice whispering, "You are not safe. You will lose everything." For a moment, he wanted to panic like everyone else. He wanted to complain, to blame, to imagine the worst. But he stopped himself. He had learned something important by now. When pressure rises, your real character shows. Instead of joining the rumors, he went home and did something simple. He wrote down 2 lists. First list, what I cannot control. Second list, what I can control. On the first list, he wrote things like company decisions, the economy, other people's opinions. On the second list, he wrote his skills, his work ethic, his attitude, his savings, his preparation. He focused on the second list. The next weeks were uncertain. Some coworkers were laid off. Tension filled the office. But Daniel worked harder than ever, not out of fear, but out of principle. He improved his performance. He asked for feedback. He volunteered for difficult tasks. And at the same time, he prepared quietly. He updated his resume. He learned new skills at night. He saved more money. He understood something deep. Security does not come from a job. It comes from your ability to adapt. One evening, after a long day, he walked home slowly. The sky was dark. The city lights were bright. He realized that fear will always exist. There will always be risk. The goal is not to remove fear. The goal is to become stronger than it. A week later, his manager called him again. Daniel entered the office calmly. "I've noticed your consistency," the manager said. "In difficult times, you stayed focused. That matters. Daniel kept his face steady, but inside, he felt something powerful, not because he was lucky, not because he was special, but because he stayed disciplined when it was uncomfortable. He also noticed another change inside himself. He no longer avoided responsibility. In fact, he started looking for it. Responsibility had once felt heavy. Now, it felt like weight training. Hard, yes, but strengthening. He began mentoring a small team at work, teaching them what he had learned, not with big speeches, just with example. Arrive on time, be prepared, speak honestly, do not blame. Some listened, some did not, but that did not disturb him. He had learned another rule. You cannot control who listens to you. You can only control whether you live your values. Outside of work, he simplified his life even more. Fewer distractions, fewer empty conversations, more reading, more exercise, more reflection. He understood that modern life is full of noise, constant information, constant comparison, constant stimulation, but clarity lives in silence. Sometimes he would sit alone, without music, without his phone, just thinking. At first, silence felt uncomfortable, then it became peaceful. In silence, he could hear his real thoughts, his real goals, his real fears, and instead of running from them, he faced them. He asked himself hard questions again. If I lose my job, who am I? If no one praises me, do I still work hard? If success takes 10 years, will I continue? His answers were becoming stronger. Daniel was no longer building confidence based on results. He was building identity based on principles. Results change. Circumstances change. People change. Principles stay. And slowly, the fear that once controlled him became smaller. Not because life was safe, but because he was becoming capable. And capability creates a quiet, unshakable confidence that no crisis can easily destroy. Time passed, and Daniel began to notice something unexpected. Success did not feel dramatic. There was no loud music, no big celebration, no sudden transformation. His life looked normal from the outside. Same apartment, same city, same routine, but inside, everything felt different. He woke up with purpose, not excitement every day, but direction. And direction is stronger than temporary motivation. One morning, while drinking coffee near his window, he realized he no longer hated Mondays. That small change surprised him. Before, Monday meant pressure and frustration. Now, it meant opportunity to improve. He had trained his mind to see challenges as practice, but life decided to test him again. A close family member became sick. Suddenly, work goals felt less important. Hospital visits replaced gym sessions. Long nights replaced structured sleep. Old stress returned. In the past, this would have destroyed his discipline. He would have used the situation as an excuse to quit everything. This time, he adjusted instead of collapsing. He reduced his goals, but he did not abandon them. Shorter workouts, fewer study hours, simple routines. He understood something powerful. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about adaptation without surrender. At the hospital, sitting in silence, he thought deeply about life, about time, about how fragile everything is. He saw clearly that achievement without meaning is empty. He asked himself, if everything disappears tomorrow, what remains? Character remains. Integrity remains. The way you treated people remains. He began speaking more kindly, not weakly, but sincerely. He thanked nurses. He listened more carefully. He spent real time with his family instead of scrolling on his phone. Pain was teaching him again. Suffering, he realized, is not only something to survive, it is something to learn from. During this difficult period, he noticed something else. Because he had built structure before, he did not completely fall apart now. His habits were like anchors. Even small routines kept him stable. Make the bed. Take a short walk. Read a few pages. Reflect for 10 minutes. Tiny actions, but powerful. Weeks later, when the situation slowly improved, Daniel felt gratitude. Not loud gratitude. Quiet, deep gratitude. He understood that strength is not shown only in success. It is shown in how you behave when life becomes heavy. Back at work, People noticed he seemed calmer than before, more patient, more grounded. He had stopped chasing external validation. Praise was pleasant, but not necessary. Criticism was uncomfortable, but not destructive. His identity was no longer based on other people's reactions. It was based on his values. He also started thinking long-term, 5 years, 10 years, not just about career, but about who he wanted to become as a human being. Strong, reliable, honest, capable. He understood that these qualities are built daily, not in big moments, in small ones. When you choose to wake up instead of sleep longer, when you choose to tell the truth instead of hiding, when you choose to work instead of complain. These decisions seem small, but they shape destiny. One evening, while walking home, he passed a group of young men arguing loudly, blaming life for their problems. For a second, he saw his old self in them, angry, directionless, waiting for change without changing. He did not judge them. He simply felt grateful that he had chosen responsibility instead of resentment. And he understood something clearly. Life will always be difficult. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be loss. But if you build yourself carefully, patiently, honestly, you become someone who can carry difficulty without breaking. Daniel was not finished growing. He knew that. But he was no longer afraid of the journey, because now, he trusted himself. Years did not pass in a dramatic way. They passed quietly, like pages turning in a book no one else was reading. Daniel was no longer the confused young man who blamed everything around him. But he also was not some perfect version of success. He was still learning, still failing, still adjusting. The difference was simple. He did not run from difficulty anymore. One day, an opportunity appeared. A higher position at work, more responsibility, more pressure, more visibility. Before, he would have doubted himself immediately. I am not ready. Others are better. What if I fail? Now, he asked a different question. Am I willing to grow into this role? There is a big difference between being ready and being willing. He applied. The interview was intense. Difficult questions, direct eye contact, moments of silence. He did not try to impress with big words. He spoke clearly, honestly, directly. When he did not know an answer, he admitted it. And strangely, that honesty felt powerful. Days later, he received the news. He got the position. For a few minutes, he allowed himself to smile, not with pride, with gratitude. But the real test began after the celebration ended. Now, people were watching him. Now, his decisions mattered more. Now, mistakes had larger consequences. The pressure increased. The first month was overwhelming. He made errors. Some team members challenged his authority. Deadlines were tighter. Expectations were higher. At night, doubt tried to return. You are not good enough. They will see you are not capable. But Daniel had trained his mind. Instead of believing every thought, he examined them. Is this fear telling me something useful? Or is it just old insecurity speaking? He separated emotion from reality. When he made a mistake, he corrected it quickly. When someone criticized him, he listened carefully. When tension rose in the team, he addressed it directly instead of avoiding it. Leadership, he discovered, is not about control. It is about responsibility multiplied. He had to manage not only his own emotions, but also the energy of others. He practiced calmness. When others panicked, he slowed his voice. When others blamed, he asked for solutions. When others complained, he redirected focus to action. This did not make him popular with everyone. Some preferred easy leaders who avoided hard conversations. But Daniel chose respect over popularity. He also learned another important lesson. Power reveals character. In his new role, he could have taken credit for the team's work. He could have blamed others for failures. Instead, he did the opposite. He gave credit publicly. He took responsibility privately. Slowly, trust grew. And trust is stronger than authority. Outside of work, he remained disciplined. Success did not change his routines. He still woke up early, still exercised, still read, still reflected. He knew something dangerous. When life improves, people relax too much. They forget the habits that built their strength. Daniel refused to forget. He reminded himself often, stay humble, stay sharp. There were still moments of loneliness, Leadership can feel isolating. Not everyone understands your decisions. Not everyone supports your standards. But he accepted that. Growth sometimes separates you from comfort. One evening, sitting alone again near his window, he thought about the journey. It had not been easy. It had not been fast. It had not been perfect. But it had been intentional. He was no longer reacting to life. He was shaping it. And perhaps the most important change of all was this. He no longer needed to prove himself to the world. He only needed to stay true to the man he decided to become. And that quiet commitment gave him a strength. No title, no money, no praise could ever replace. Success did not make Daniel softer. It made him more aware. With greater responsibility came greater temptation. Temptation to relax too much. Temptation to believe he had arrived. Temptation to think the hard part was over. But he knew something most people ignore. There is no final level in personal growth. One mistake, one lazy season, one period of ego. That is enough to slowly destroy years of discipline. So he stayed alert, not anxious, not paranoid, just aware. As his income increased, his lifestyle could have expanded quickly. Bigger apartment, expensive habits, endless upgrades. Instead, he asked himself a simple question. Does this purchase improve my life, or only my image? That question saved him from many unnecessary decisions. He invested in learning, in health, in experiences with people he respected, not in things that only impressed strangers. Because he understood something clearly. Freedom is better than luxury. At work, new challenges continued to appear. One major project failed. Despite months of effort, the team felt discouraged. Some blamed external factors. Others blamed each other. Daniel felt the weight of it. He gathered the team and said something simple. We made mistakes. Let's study them. Then we move forward. No drama, no excuses. Failure became feedback. That approach changed the culture around him. Slowly, people stopped fearing mistakes. They focused on improvement. At home, life continued to test him in quiet ways. Old friends sometimes mocked his discipline. They said he had changed, that he was too serious now. Maybe he had changed, but he was no longer interested in being understood by everyone. He was interested in being aligned with his values. He learned to accept that growth can feel lonely. When you stop participating in gossip, when you stop wasting time, when you stop complaining, some people feel uncomfortable around you. That is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to remain consistent. Years later, Daniel stood in front of a small group of young professionals, invited to speak about leadership and growth. He looked at them and saw himself in their faces, uncertain, ambitious, searching. He did not give them complicated advice. He said, start with small discipline. Keep promises to yourself. Tell the truth. Accept responsibility. Improve one skill at a time. And never build your confidence on other people's opinions. The room was quiet. He continued, your life changes. The moment you stop waiting for rescue, no one is coming. That is the good news. Because it means the power is already in your hands. After the talk, some people thanked him. Some asked questions. Some simply nodded. But what mattered most was not their reaction. It was the journey behind his words. When he walked home that evening, the city looked the same as years ago. Same streets, same noise, same lights. But he was not the same man. He had learned that strength is built in private. Discipline is built in repetition. Confidence is built in responsibility. Character is built in difficulty. Life never became perfect. There were still problems, still unexpected challenges, still moments of doubt. But now, doubt did not control him. Because he knew who he was. A man who keeps his word. A man who stands up after failure. A man who adapts instead of complains. A man who grows, even when growth is uncomfortable. And that is the final lesson. You do not need to be extraordinary to change your life. You need to be consistent. Small actions, daily discipline, honest reflection, courage in difficult moments. Over time, those simple choices create an unshakable foundation. And one day, you will look back and realize something powerful. The world did not suddenly become easier. You simply became stronger. And once you become stronger, no challenge feels impossible. Your life is shaped by the standards you accept and the habits you repeat. Choose them carefully, build yourself patiently, stand firmly, and never forget this truth. The greatest transformation is quiet, but its impact is permanent. Thank you for walking through this journey. If this story taught you anything, let it be this: real change is quiet, slow, and built in private. Keep your discipline when no one is watching. Keep your standards when it is uncomfortable. Keep your word, especially to yourself. You do not need applause. You need consistency. Stay strong. Stay honest. Keep building. See you in the next lesson.